This video is sponsored by Battle City Gym. Check them out for all your singles and sealed product needs. Hey guys, this is Mike.
And Joe.
From Deepwood Force of Will.
Deepwood.
And we're here coming at you with another one of our top 10 lists. It's been a long time since we did that. Hope you missed us. This is our top 10 cards from Lapis Cluster.
Yep, we're doing a little bit of like a review in what Lapis Cluster was and what the best cards out of it was.
Yep, with rotation to Rare Cluster coming in about a month now, we've got a lot to talk about, a lot of things to get over, and definitely some interesting cards that we can see going towards the future.
Yep, just a big asterisk on this top 10. There's no rulers going to be involved because as new rulers come out, different playstyles could come out, and we're just going to say that these are the most easily splashable and cards you should look out for in the near future.
Yep, exactly. Rules give too much of an identity. These cards can give identities to decks, but they're more just like, this is a good card. I would play this card.
This helps you build a deck.
Exactly.
Alright.
So without further ado, let's go to number 10. So for number 10, we have Dawn of the Earth. This was a chant that was introduced in Echoes of the New World. It's one of the few white-blue cards from Lapis Cluster that's actually playable.
Yeah, because most of it's Millium support, and that did not work out. Anyway, this card's quick cast. It's got to choose one on 3 different effects. First one is this turn if a Resonator would be put into your opponent's field without being played, removed from the game instead. Other effect is recover target Resonator you control, give it +2/+2 in barrier. Last effect is remove all non-stone, non-magic stone, non-J-roller cards your opponent controls with total +0 from the game. And all those effects give you a draw.
So basically you're 1-for-1ing with the effect, and you're getting a pretty sick effect on top of that as well.
Yeah, they can be ranged from really powerful with the first effect, especially with the cards that we have coming up on our next page.
Boop. Like
Nine-Tailed Fox, which you can pretty much just shut down the whole deck using the first effect, for a turn at least. Preventing the Chimeras from entering the board is, you know, stops them from getting their stones, stops them from Amit from eating something, or stops Manticore from destroying an addition or looking at your hand.
Exactly, so nothing hits the board of Fox, they get removed from the game immediately, and you have a turn just to sit there and breathe as long as you have the mana open for that Dawn of the Earth.
Right.
With regard to other cards that do get hit, even with Izanagi coming out, Spinning Myths is a card that was introduced in Lapis Cluster, and is actually a card that is affected by Dawn of the Earth. When you play Spinning Myths, you're trying to put a myth like Izanagi into the field. You play Spinning Myths, that Izanagi is removed from the game, won't get any effects off, and your opponent just spend 3 mana to do pretty much nothing.
They will still get the torrent if they activate that. Just
yeah, right.
And the last card that we have there is Skyscraper Giant. It's not exactly what you want to hit with Dawn of the Earth's recover effect, but it does have a tap effect that's really powerful. It can wipe a whole board with its deal 800 to non-flying J Resonators, and it's got a pretty beefy body for it to hit face with, so you kind of get good value out of that. You know, doing 3,400 damage or 1,600 to the whole board. Both those things are pretty good, or just a mixture of both.
Yep, so all these cards do have some effect with Dawn of the Earth. Something to note, Dawn of the Earth's first effect is normally associated with the Strong Regalia, with Regalia leaving standard format, or now New Frontiers format, with it being only Lapis Cluster. The only things that card will be able to hit will, in fact, be tokens.
Yeah, unless we get other zero-cost cards. Could happen. Don't expect it yet.
Yep. Alright, so that's pretty much our first pick.
Yep, that's Dawn of the Earth.
Yep, it's a pretty good card. Definitely suggest trying it out if you haven't already.
Moving on, we have...
Number 9 is the Nameless Mist. This is a 1-black chant that came out in Curse of the Frozen Casket, the first set of Lapis Cluster, aside from, of course, the starter decks. And it was definitely one of the things that set black as the main control color for the format.
Yeah, it's the counterpart to another really good control hand card, which is Scorn of Dark Alice. Nameless Mist says, look at your opponent's hand, choose a non-resonator card, they discard that card, and then it's got to put a +1 counter on, +1/+1 counter on a resonator, which is decent. Most of the time that part doesn't go off, but it's always good when it does.
Exactly. Just buffing things up by +1/+1 is really good to have them out of range of certain effects that would destroy them, but of course, you're not using it for that effect. You're looking at your opponent's hand, you're getting information, and you're knocking something powerful out of their hand within like the first turn or two of the game.
Yep, so like pretty much post-Mulligan, they have their curve set out, what they want to do for the first like couple turns of the game, and picking out one of their powerful chants in the early game can really set them back and really have to rethink their strategy, slow down their gameplay.
Something very interesting to know about this card as well is that in its initial conception, when people were first using decks with it, it was also used in combo decks to hit cancels out of the hand. Since most cancels did happen to be non-resonator cards, all the cancel spells in the game, having the ability to just look at your opponent's hand, know the cancels they have at that time, set the course really well for combo-based decks in that time.
It also hurt combo decks that were trying to play against the Nameless Mist, because the biggest combo decks in the beginning of the format were the Ancient Magic decks, in terms of like Mars and Mercurius and Sol. Nameless Mist can rip the big Ancient Magic spells that are trying to kill the game just straight out of the hand, so they can't even play it. So
it helped combo decks, it hurt combo decks, it helped control, it hurt control. The card was just all around very, very powerful for almost any deck that was trying to maintain some kind of advantage over the opponent throughout the course of the game, and this card definitely earns a top spot there.
And that was number 9, Nameless Mist.
Yep. Notice we didn't even provide any cards on the next screen just because
it hits everything.
It's a very, very high...
wide spectrum of cards.
Wide spectrum, exactly. So, on to the next. We have Mariabella, the Machine-Hearted.
So this is a 4-drop, 10/10. It's a Heroic Spirit, which doesn't really come up that much. But it has a really, really long effect if Mike wants to go into it.
Oh boy, here I go. So Mariabella, the first thing she does is that when she enters the board, you search your Magic Stone deck for a non-special Magic Stone, put it into your field, and then shuffle your Magic Stone deck. She has 2 resonances, depending on if you hit either a Fire Magic Stone or a Wind Magic Stone off the top. If a Fire Magic Stone gets hit, you put a Blast counter on her. If a Wind Magic Stone comes in, she gets a Breeze counter. Now, Blast counters, if you have them on her, you remove them to deal 500 damage to a target J Resonator. Very powerful effect. And also, if you remove a Breeze counter from her, you can cancel target chant spell unless its controller pays 1, which is an effect we've seen in the past, but never on a body. And having these effects on a 10/10 body is pretty incredible, especially with the fact that whenever a resonance effect goes off, they all go off whenever you tap for a stone. You can do that once per turn, so these can easily snowball incredibly well out of control very quickly.
Mariabella's got some great colors to her. Green-red has been pretty aggressive colors, and the resonance effect means that she can continuously snowball, and she has her own ability to ramp you up in stones, which is incredible. That's a really nice package all rolled into one.
Yep, because it seems like a little bit of a late game card when she ramps you a stone, but having a stone that ramps you up to 5 and then up to 6, and the fact that you can immediately get whichever resonance you prefer if you happen to have both fire and wind stones, very, very good utility in that package there. So we have a little bit of a comparison here for you. Again, we've got in the middle there, Magic Stone of Blasting Waves, the thing that normally triggers those resonance abilities, just because when it comes into the field, because it's treated as a Wind and Fire Magic Stone, you get to get both resonances, which is incredibly powerful.
And yep, and the other 2 cards that we have on this page is first Lightning Strike. There's a lot of Lightning Strike here. Lightning Strike is deal 500 to target J Resonator. We're going to ignore the hit to face part. Having that just attached to a body, and you can continuously just gain these counters and then throw them at your opponent. Pretty strong considering it's a 1-will card. And on the other side we have Wall of Wind, which is cancel target spell unless it's control pay 1. It's verbatim what the card does.
Only difference there though is that Mariabella can only
it's only target chance.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the only difference there, but again, having a 1-will technically discount for having a little bit of a restriction, 100% okay, because you can just keep snowballing those counters up, and you always, as long as Prissy remains on the board, and if you control the board with her, you can constantly gain those breeze counters on there, constantly cancel target chance, and definitely can snowball out of effect, especially going towards the late game.
So that was Mariabella the Machine-Hearted. Pretty strong card.
A lot of effects all rolled into one. Definitely earns that top 8 spot. Now to number 7, though, we have another card somewhat similar to where Mariabella is listed. We have Little Red Fairy Tale of Air.
Yeah, this is a 1-will, 1 green, 3/3. It's not going to be a 3/3 for much longer. It's a Resonator Fairy Tale, and it's gains +1/+1 for each Wind Magic Stone you control. As you saw with Blasting Waves, there's a lot of green Wind Magic Stones in the game. And also, if you have a non-special Wind Magic Stone, it gains Swiftness. So it can also start going pretty fast.
Yep, with Little Red, you have a scaling body, you have constant sources of damage with that swiftness. She's a 1-drop, so she's not a high priority threat for your opponent to cancel or try to get rid of her, because it feels so bad trying to use all your resources to get rid of a 1-will green card. Definitely an overlooked card when Vidgolf 3 was first released, but as soon as people realized that they could play Persia aggro and toss some greenstones in, hit a greenstone first turn, and then it's not even that bad because you have a 4/4 swiftness on that turn. Really, really potent ability there.
Yep, and if you don't deal with it when it's a 4/4, it becomes a 5/5, 6/6, 7/7, 8/8, 9/9, 10/10, and you're probably dead from that point because you got hit in the face for like, I don't know, 37 damage if I counted right. I probably didn't.
Probably not. And especially if they have 2 of them that scale together.
If they energize out the second one, you probably had a bad day.
I've been on the receiving end of this and the giving end when I had first experimented with that card, and I can definitely tell you that having a scaling body like that, especially if you're playing more than 10 stones, if you happen to go into the Troll Deck game and then you just top deck into a 12/12 Swift Beat Stick, whew, it gets pretty crazy.
So it does have some interactions with, especially Priscia being the premier aggro ruler currently. But in general, she is just a very powerful 1-will resonator, which is, you know, green has had plenty of those, but none that have started hitting the face. Most of them have been control cards.
So with this, we do see a high focus of green going into the aggro area. Green's kind of putting on a few different masks in Lapis Cluster, and this being the kind of aggro path has been pretty interesting to see. And I do hope that Forcefield continues this trend with very powerful green cards that have really, really potent effects early in the game that can scale up towards the late game.
Yeah, kind of takes a little bit of the identity away from fire, but we'll see if that continues.
Alright, and then on to the next. Number 6, we have Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly.
I know that Mike really likes playing this card. I don't think I've actually played it myself. So it's a it's total cost 2 and X with green-white. And it's a chant. It's search your main deck for a resonator or addition with total cost X+1 or less and put it into your field, then shuffle your deck. So, cool thing about this card initially is that if for some reason they put something that's going to block it, let's say Dawn of the Earth, you could just pick something else because you don't have to pick something until it resolves. So that's pretty cool.
Yep, it's a super flexible card, probably one of the most flexible cards this game has seen. For a 1-will premium, you can search your deck for literally any card, any resonator, any addition, and put it into the board. If you know your opponent's playing a deck with a ton of activate abilities, let's put a Tsukuyomi Noble on the board. What are they going to do? If you're playing against Fox, oh man, I really wish I could play my my Chimeras and get their enter effects. Nope, Abdul's on the board now. It also is unrestrictive of the color of the resonator, so even if you're playing a...
you can pull resonators outside your stone base, which is kind of silly. I know people when this card first came out were using it to, in green-white, pull Shackles of Ice out of the deck, even though they weren't playing blue, which is pretty hilarious.
Yep, because again, it's X+1, Shackles' total cost is 1, yank that out of the deck, Mikage can't play, Charlotte can't play.
It had a lot of cool interactions in the beginning, and now it's being used more for its ability to just tutor resonators at will, so you don't have to draw into them. You can just draw into your Moonbeam and get whatever resonator you need for the situation.
Exactly. One last thing that Kaguya Moon Butterfly was really good for, I do know that a lot of players for Death and Taxes, which really showcase this card's potential, would a lot of the time use it to get Frigg, Goddess of Abundant Harvest out of their deck, recycle the Moonbeam back to the hand, and get the infinite Frigg loop going. That was a really silly play. Having a Frigg from your deck for 6 mana, and being able to recycle through everything again, having Moonbeam be recyclable was just super incredible for tutoring the whole deck as soon as the train got rolling there.
Yep, and so that's number 6, Moonbeam Butterfly, another card that we didn't really put specific examples for because it can hit anything as long whatever you can dream it, and Moonbeam Butterfly can pull it out besides chance.
Exactly, not chance. No, but absolutely, Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly definitely one of the most flexible cards the game has seen so far.
Yeah, and it's not even at a premium. It's not like Faria Summon. which is another card that came out in like the same set.
Yep, same set.
Fiery Summon just adds it to the hand. I know it's good for inheritance, but Moonbeam Butterfly puts it on the field for only 1 will extra, which is incredibly good.
Alright, on to the next one. We got our number 5 slot. New card from Echoes of the New World again. We have Arla, Demonic Flying Ace.
And this is a really scary card. People really underestimated how good its effect is, but let's just go into the stats first. So it's a 7/8 for 3 will, 1 white. It's a Will of Despair, so don't put in your Book of Hope decks. It's got flying. Definitely a good keyword to put on a Arla, considering he should be flying. Always a he. And the powerful effect that he has is pay 200 life. This card deals 200 damage to a target attacking or blocking Resonator.
So that's very reminiscent of Arla's old Artemis the God's Bow, where for a target attacking or blocking Resonator, you would just ping the tap.
You would
the
take
Artemis.
off a counter, tap it, and it would deal 400 to attacking or blocking Resonator.
Yep. This time though, it's you pay life instead of tapping. It's 200 damage, and you can do it as many times as you want on the chase, as long as you have the life to pay.
Yeah, so in the early game, especially against like aggro decks, this card is absolutely insane because it means that certain Resonators, that when they attack with certain Resonators, if it's like a 6/6 and they're going face with it, you just pay your 6 life and you get rid of the Resonator as if, you know, they were going to hit you in the face anyway, so.
And Arla doesn't have to block, doesn't have to even have to go into battle. Just
Doesn't have to tap.
activate the effects, you're good to go. So it's basically at any speed. If you play it on that turn, you don't have to tap it to do any damage. As long as you have the ability to play the Arla and you have it stick on the board, your opponent's battle phase becomes that much more risky.
It gets even better when we go to Yggdrasil Malefic Verdant Tree, which is the ruler that it supports. So the big thing about Yggdrasil is that it has the effect that you can do green-black tap it, and you can actually pull Arla from your banish zone, considering that you would mill it from your deck instead of take damage. And that's a big deal, but considering Arla is the only flyer out of all those, so it's your only way to block flying damage coming at you. And you get this really good, like, damage negation effect. It's not really damage negation, it's just like
Damage prevention, technically speaking.
kinda. You're just kinda like destroying Resonators that are attacking or blocking.
Yep, because with Yggdrasil, your life total doesn't matter. What matters is the size of your deck. But when Arla uses its ability to pay 200 life and shoot something, that comes out of your life total because it's being paid. Yggdrasil doesn't have to worry about that, so you basically have essentially, what, 19 free pings?
Yep, so you can deal 38 damage to Resonators if you really want to. I don't recommend that, but you can live your life any way you want.
If you want, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. The other thing we have here is, of course, 4,000 life on the side there. We didn't have a good representation for that, so we picked a bottle of 4,000 life. The more life you have with Arla, the better you can run him with, the better you can deal with the opponent's board. So it's really, really good in the early game, and if you can preserve your life towards the late game, you can have a massively good resource in order to remove anything that's causing problems for you.
And at worst, he's not even that bad of a top deck, considering he has flying, so he's a decent blocker if you have no life left.
He's got to be a decent blocker, a decent attacker as well, which is great.
Yep. He's just got a lot of versatility, especially as a white Resonator. White hasn't seen that much love in the recent sets, so that's a pretty powerful Resonator for white to get.
Yep, having an instant damage as much as you need, it's pretty good.
Alright.
And then moving on from there, got our number 4 slot. I definitely hope anybody could see this coming, because this is Captain Hook the Pirate.
The only thing I think people might see is that they thought it would be later on the list, but I think they'll be pretty happy with what's in front of him. So he's a 5 will, 2 blue, 3 of any, 1,000, decent stats. Maybe not for the cost, but decent stats overall. When this card enters your field, choose one, put up to 2 targeted special magic stones on top of the owner's magic stone decks in any order, or return up to 2 target Resonators to their owner's hands. That is the most powerful water Resonator ever, besides maybe like Cheshire Cat.
Yep, much agreed. Captain Hook happens to be a card that has been extremely powerful since its initial showing in Curse of the Frozen Casket. It's been a staple card in a lot of water decks since the beginning of the cluster, and it has been a staple for what's called the Lumiere hook deck, which it lends half that name to because of the fact that it's an enter effect, so which means when it enters the board, or if it's flashed in with Lumiere's effect, which we'll show in just a second, you can stack those effects and set your opponent back
Four
turns. Yep. It's pretty brutal, especially if you can get multiple hook effects off within multiple turns. The more hook effects you get, the harder it is for your opponent to deal with them. It's just a very, very concise and powerful effect that just will not stop being relevant as long as people are playing multicolor stone decks.
Yeah, this is like a huge cancel target for a lot of decks, considering he's a big drop. He's probably the biggest drop in your deck at 5 will, and he does a lot since he limits your resources, since you can't play cards if you don't have the stones to play them. So let's go and look at Lumiere.
So we've got Lumiere, the Fate of Rebirth. If you see Hook being played in any other deck, it might be like a cheesy Mercurius deck or something, but most of the time, if you're seeing a Hook, it's going to be in Lumiere's decks.
Lumiere just makes enter effects just that much better since you can get them off twice.
Yep, exactly, because at the end of the turn, you remove target resonator you control from the game if you happen to rest the Hook in some way or another, and then you put it back into the field. When it comes back into the field, it's unrested, and it triggers its enter effect again. Put 2 more special stones back into your opponent's stone deck, and your opponent has just lost 4 stones total to that Hook.
And that probably spells game for them, unless they have like 10 stones already. A big thing that we wanted to talk about this card is that, especially when it first came out, it was crazy good. The first time we ever saw it was in the championships, where every single deck was running Hook. There was no one not running Hook, except for maybe the people that decided to main Wukong, but they didn't. They decided Wukong.
Yeah, because Hook was just seen as the best card from the World Championship back in 2016. Everybody splashed blue in their decks. Everybody had green to ramp up into the Hook. Whoever ramped up into Hook first had a major advantage in that tournament. It was really crazy how well that card did, and has still stood the test of time, even up until the end of Lapis Cluster.
Especially up until this little guy gets released at number 3.
Number 3, we have Abdul Examples, Poet of Madness.
For 2 black, you get a 6/6 body, premium stats, very good. And you get a Resonator Wizard. That doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. The only thing that does matter is his ability, which is a continuous effect that says, Resonators entering your opponent's field don't cause their own abilities to trigger.
Now with this little Abdul here, it's kind of an homage back to the old Abdul, which on its J-Ruler side just said, enter effects don't activate. When they got rid of the enter keyword, when they switched over to when this card entered the field effects, Abdul saw no play because it didn't affect those abilities. This one, however, does because of the wording.
Yep, and this thing also affects other things that would be similar to enter abilities but aren't enter abilities, which is kind of weird, but
it's very interesting. But at the same time, Abdul is mainly used for stopping effects like, as you saw before, Hook, any of the Chimeras in Fox, Frig, I guess. So we have those examples over here. Again, we know that stopping a Griffin from entering the board means the Fox player can't get their stones back, Captain Hook can't get his effects off. So having the ability to just stop those really, really powerful and game-breaking effects that we see here just makes Abdul such a powerhouse in just any deck that can splash black.
It's like really unfortunate how good Abdul is. Because as soon as they stick in, like for Fox players, as soon as they stick an Abdul on the board, you're just like questioning whether or not you should just like be paying stones just to get bodies out on the board as opposed to their enters. And it just becomes a struggle. You try and use, like, as you can see there, like things like Invisible Flame, Dark Purge, Terraclite Excalibur.
You just gotta play bad cards just to make sure you have the removal options to stop Abdul.
Yeah, and if Abdul sticks too long, it just ends the game because your opponent's getting their enter effects off while you're not. And that hurts.
Yep. The fact that he's got that 600 body, just everything about him screams powerful, low drop resonator, and he's actually one of the reasons that Death and Taxes did so well. Having the ability to tutor him out of the deck with our other good card, Moonbeam Butterfly, just having that concise body with a bunch of bodies like that is just... the stun effect is just way too good.
Another important thing, a card that was really prevalent in the meta before Abdul came out was Space-Time Anomaly. That dealt -5/-5 to a Resonator. Because it didn't kill Abdul, people stopped running the card because it wasn't good enough. Even though the card drew a card off of it and it had Remnant. That's crazy.
Yep, Abdul's power level was beyond incredible, and still, of course, still sees play today, just because of still how prevalent enter effects are. As long as they're powerful enters that need to be stopped, Abdul will be seen as a 2 to 3 to 4 of in just about any black deck.
Yep, it's a fantastic control and mid-range card. Probably won't see it in aggro, but hey, black aggro could happen, and you probably put a 6/6 Abdul in there.
Yep, stats are too good. Alright, with that, moving on to our number 2 slot, we have
Two
a
different.
tie.
Unfortunately, we couldn't decide which of these two things deserve the slot, and we wanted to fit everything that was behind it in, so we got Sacred Elf, and we have Tama.
Both kind of fill similar positions, but don't have the exact same position in their green decks. However, both do provide a very, very important role as kind of the identity of green decks going forward in Lapis Cluster.
First and foremost, we have Sacred Elf, which is the green 2/3, tap it to produce green, which is pretty much the same thing as Elvish Priest from Grimm, which was a 1/4 instead. Really strong as a ramp Resonator, and the stats as a 2/3 means they can hit a lot harder. Who cares? Anyway,
You're not using it to attack.
the idea behind just Sacred Elf is if you're playing a deck that needs to get to its late game as fast as possible, playing green is a really good way to help you get to that faster than if you would otherwise. Because consider this, if you're both trying to get to hook faster, and you're playing Sacred Elf and they're not, you're getting to hook faster. You win the game.
And then on the other side we have Tama, who solidified itself as the premier green 1-drop for tempo-based green decks, as well as kind of like token or board presence-based green decks. It's a 1-mana 2/2 familiar cat. When it enters the field, you draw a card, and then you banish it to deal 200 damage to a Resonator. Having all that packed up into a single 1-mana body, just way too powerful. It's just incredibly strong and gives a lot of identity as just a small cantrip card for green that just gave them a lot of fuel, a lot of power, and a lot of sustainability going towards those late game strategies that the ramp allows for.
Unfortunately, as we will see on our next page. Right, do we have a next page for this one?
Nope.
Oh, never mind then. Tama, yeah, don't we?
Well, we've got this showing
Yeah.
that if you play a deck with any of these, you should be playing both of those.
Right.
Or at
Because
least
like,
one of those.
as you can see, most of the recent topping deck lists, pretty much every single relevant deck, anything that's going to be going towards the top, is playing green, and they're playing one of these two cards. Probably Tama. Tama is like extremely powerful. Sacred Elf just gave like an identity to ramp-based decks again, because before that we only had Blessing of Yggdrasil to do ramp and Alice Cluster, and that just was not good enough.
Right, so back then we wouldn't see much of that. We would see like aggressive strategies, we would see black control strategies, but we would never see ramping up into bigger stuff. There was never a need for that.
The only one that really did it was the Huanglong deck, but that was not a powerful deck with that Reflect.
Yep, exactly. With Sacred Elf in the metagame, sort of a shout out to Melfi as well, who filled a similar role to Sacred Elf. We were able to see very, very fast ramp decks, Lumi Hook being one of the prevalent ones, of course. There's just a lot of goodness that came from those two cards being printed, especially being printed from a starter deck.
Yeah, they're strictly just reprints of Grimm cards that were probably the most popular and gave a lot of identity to Force of Will in the first place.
Yep, so an homage to the oldies, but giving a lot of identity to this new cluster here. These two shape the metagame incredibly well, but not quite as incredibly as our last pick.
Yeah, unfortunately there's something better than a green one-will Resonator that draws a card that goes on every single deck in the current meta.
And it's the card that goes in every other deck in the current meta. But first, before that, we definitely do want to make a quick mention to honorable mentions to keep you in suspense before we reveal the big one.
Yep.
The first one we have on the left, there's Heavenly Gust. Heavenly Gust deserves a spot on this list as a 2-will quick cast that destroys a target edition of Regalia, or if you torrent it, you destroy all editions in Regalia your opponent controls.
So this card became really powerful as like things like Val 2.0 were really strong in the metagame, where, you know, they just put out like 3, 4, 5 Regalia and then try and hit you in the face with their J Resonator and their God's Arts. Unfortunately, when they get hit by Heavenly Gust and they lose all the Regalia, Val 2.0 isn't exactly that powerful. It's not unfair, which is what you need to be a really strong meta deck.
Yep, so Heavenly Gust definitely helped out a lot with that. It was a card that really helped pave the way to more moving away from Regalia and going more towards Resonator, Chant, ruler-based control strategies, and definitely put a focus away from the old Owl Cluster mechanics that people started kind of getting tired of towards the end of it.
Yeah, big thing that you want to note about this card is that before Heavenly Gust was printed, every single deck, and I'm not joking, every single deck was running Ruler's Memoria because Regalia was just that good. But then Heavenly Gust came out and Regalia became unsafe. So keep that in mind when you're questioning how good Heavenly Gust is.
It literally defined the difference between two formats.
Yep. Next thing we have is Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic. One will, Chant, Quick Cast, and Remnant. Great keywords. Target Resonator loses all abilities and becomes a 4/4 bear until end of turn. So it matches up like Battle Tricks and Final Forfeit into a blue Chant, and then gives it Remnant.
And Quick Cast.
Well, it already had Quick Cast, but yeah. That's a lot of effects.
Yeah, they bundled a lot of really good cards that were, they bundled a lot of really good effects that were put on really bad cards way back when.
Decent cards. They weren't crazy good.
Fairy Flower Extract.
I mean, that's a bad card. And Fairy Flower Extract was like an addition anyway. I mean, Final Forfeit was still always a decent card, is what I'm saying.
Gotcha, but yeah. Unfortunately, not as good as this card because Charlotte's Water Transformation Magic rolls all those effects into one. That's a very good early game control card if you're trying to maintain board presence and just trying to make sure that your opponent doesn't try to get any Swiftness Resonators or any powerful activate abilities on you. It's also really good for the late game because if your opponent has like an Arthur Pendragon on the board, you bear it.
Yep. You attack with your first thing, you bear it. Your thing is probably bigger than a bear, the thing dies.
Exactly. So, just very good for battle tricks, and one of the big things that this card was used for back at the first time we ever saw it was the combination Bear Bow.
Yeah, Artemis the God's Bow. Getting another mention. Comboed really well with this because if they try to block with a Resonator, you bared it, and then it became 400 health, so it could get shot by the bow.
And one-shotted by the bow.
Yeah, and your bow gets 2 counters, your Bear Magic can activate 2 times. It was like a match made in heaven for those 2 cards. Unfortunately, with bow moving out with rotation, Bear Magic kind of loses that super powerful control aspect to it. So we decided that maybe we won't put it up in the top 10, but we'll talk about it at least a little bit because it's still a powerful card.
Yeah, it's still absolutely probably one of the cards that infuriates people most in this game, I think. People trying to stick like big Resonators on the board just get bared.
All those Timmys trying to play their big stuff.
Yep. And Spike. And then all the way on the right, we have a card that I've mentioned a couple of times here. It's one card that was certainly overlooked the first time it was printed, but looking at it towards the future, looking at the fact that we're going towards a value game, Frigg, Goddess of Abundant Harvests, is an incredibly powerful effect bundled into a body.
And speaking of that body, it's 2 green, 3 void, 8/8, and when this card enters your field, put up to 1 target Resonator, 1 target Addition, and up to 1 target Chant from your graveyard into your hand. So you don't have to have any of those in your graveyard to activate that enter, which is really good. That means you don't have to have a really set up grave. And you get to draw 3 cards basically that you already used because they were usable.
Yep, and something to note is that if you have 2 Friggs in your deck, if you Frigg up the first Frigg and then you get the other Frigg back to your hand, you can technically have an infinite cycle going as long as the Friggs go to the graveyard.
Yep, so if a Frigg gets banished though, you're kind of screwed, but...
Yep, unfortunately.
Who needs that to happen?
Last little thing about Frigg, it's a myth, so you can take the Spinning Myth set out, but you don't want to Spinning Myths out of Frigg.
Yeah, because cheating in the Frigg isn't that good, considering you probably don't have anything in your grave earlier in the game.
Except for the Spinning Myths.
Great, you can get back to Spinning Myths. The Spinning Myths another Frigg. That's a real Spinning Myths loop.
That's the winner. So Frigg definitely gets an honorable mention for that, just for being one of the most powerful recyclable effects in the game right now. And people will probably still continue to use this going towards Rhea Cluster, just because if the game continues to slow down, since Alice Cluster mechanics are slowly being phased out, we will definitely see a huge focus on retaining value towards the late game.
And Frigg's really good at that.
But all these cards, everything we've done before, does happen to pale in comparison to our last card on the list.
Which is probably a card that no one wants to talk about, but it's there.
Number 1, we have Severing Winds.
Oh man, why'd they print this? Alright, so it's a 4-will card. It's not a 4-will card. It's a quick cast chant. If your opponent played 2 or more cards this turn, you may pay less to play this card. Cancel target spell. It's free. It's a cancel, as long as they start torrenting.
If they start torrenting, if they just try to combo you off, if your opponent decides to play their 1-drop Resonator before their 5-drop Resonator, they get punished. It's a card that punishes either bad placement or unfortunate situations for your opponent. It can be used to play mind games with your opponent. If you have multiple Severing Winds and so does your opponent, you go into cancel wars. It's just an incredibly powerful card.
So the big problem with Severing Winds is that it takes away the green cost on the card and makes it free. That means any deck can run it. You could be a red-black deck, you still got Severing Winds in your deck. Every deck can have a cancel. You get a cancel, you get a cancel.
Everybody gets cancels! The only problem with that is that if you're trying to put this card into every single deck, you gotta get a playset, and they're super rares, and they're probably gonna continue to see a price increase as every deck essentially can play them.
And every single deck that tops is probably going to be running them too, unless they're like, I don't know, gimmicky Cheshire Cat's assistant decks.
Even though sometimes play them.
You could play it in that too. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, Severing Winds is definitely a card that has been on a lot of people's radars. A lot of people have been very worried about this card. It's an extremely powerful card. It definitely has some issues there, but at this point, it hasn't been 100% game-breaking, in my opinion.
Well, this is coming from the guy that played a Death and Taxes at a GP, where he plays 1 card a turn.
This is very true.
When you're playing a combo deck, let's say like I was playing Fox, you do have to like slow down your turns to play around Severing Winds. You do have to throw baits into the Severing Winds so that you can try and play a little bit faster. It's difficult to play around. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of mind games. It really is not a card for the faint of heart. If you're just gonna be like, I'm just gonna play my cards the way I want to play them, you're probably gonna get ruined by Severing Winds.
Yep, so what Severing Winds does is that it makes people stop and think, which is incredible in a card game.
Yep, and it's really good against aggro, because they just want to, throw their hand on board. Unless they play on turn, but that doesn't happen all the time.
Exactly, so with all this in mind, we also don't have a second screen for Severing Winds, because what does it stop? Everything, where it can be played, everywhere.
Yep. Target spell. Not chant, not resonator, cancel, whatever you put on the chase.
Incredibly powerful card. Personally, I kind of would have liked to see this card give a discount by 1 green and then 2.
Yeah, or I would have actually liked to see it say, as long as you control a wind magic stone.
That would have been pretty interesting too.
Because then at least you're playing a wind deck. It's not like you're playing against, like, I don't know, red aggro, mono red stones, and then all of a sudden you get canceled out of nowhere. Like, that would probably be pretty infuriating.
Yeah, seeing that there. I do certainly hope that if they do get a chance to out of this, they just do something to it to make it just a little bit less powerful, because at its current power level, being the 4 or 0 cost is just... it's probably just a little too much.
In fact, the card's not even bad as a 4 cancel. There's a lot of times where you just have too many stones, your cards aren't getting any value, your opponent's playing around Severing Winds the whole game. Eventually you could just cast the Severing Winds as is and cancel something when the stones stop mattering, which is pretty good. Unfortunately, it's just good no matter what.
Yep, no matter what the situation. So, with all those effects in mind, definitely one of the best ways to close out the cluster as just one of the most powerful cards the game has seen in a long time.
Yep, so, thank you guys for watching.
Yep. hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts, your comments. Let us know if you think we missed any really powerful cards that definitely deserve to be talked about from Lapis Cluster, because we would love to know your opinions on that.
Yep, we definitely probably talked about them. Just, we only have 10 slots that we wanted to work with. So, there you go. Maybe 13 if you want to count the honorable mentions.
And I can only fit 3 of those on a slide.
Oh, no.
Awesome, alright.
All right. Deepwood signing out.
Peace!